your training host during this segment of Back to the Basics on health and healing. And in this lesson, we're going to continue on to look at Job's life. And we're going to see how his hedge of protection, which was the hedge of faith, came down through ignorance and great fear, and he was taken captive by Satan. Remember, in previous lessons, we talked about that word captive, where you're enslaved. You have no freedom. Things are thrust upon you without your desire. Well, let's take a look at Job's life here. We're going to again look at Job 1, verse 22. We're going to look at the New Living Translation. Ooh, I need binoculars to read it from back there. But verse 22 says, in all of this, everything that was going around in his life, in all of this, all of the problems that were coming at him, all of the loss that he was facing, all of the things that were wrong coming against him or defeating him that was coming against him. Look at this. He's in all of this, in every bad circumstance, in every bad situation, in every bad thing that was facing him, Job did not sin. How did he not sin? He didn't sin with his mouth. He didn't sin by blaming God. Job 2, verse 10 says, but God replied. He's talking to his wife who told him to curse God. He said, but Job replied, you talk like a foolish woman. Should we accept only good things from the hand of God and never anything bad? So in all of this, so any of the bad that was coming, anything that was coming, you have to remember this is pre-Jesus, pre-redemption. He said, in all of this, Job did not sin because he said nothing with his mouth. He said nothing wrong. And this is what gets us in trouble right here. This is what seemed to open the door for Job. In spite of the things which came upon Job, in spite of things that happened to his body, in spite of things that happened to his family, in spite of things, according to these verses, he would not and did not blame God. He did not speak evil against God. He did not open his mouth to speak and to accept the wrong, that God had done this or blamed it. You see, we know that Job was a righteous man, which means he was in right standing with God. And all that we see in chapters 1 and chapter 2, and when you read those particular chapters, you see the things that happened, the bad things that came. Job did not sin. He actually refused to speak or blame God. Job was a godly man. He was a godly man. He was a good man. He had integrity. He had honor. He had wealth. He had riches. But fear came in. And that fear opened the door and allowed the devil a place in his life. Open the door so that the devil could come in to steal, kill, and destroy. So if you're ignorant of your rights and your privileges as a believer, then it's possible to be a wonderful Christian, to go to church, to read your Bible. It's possible to be doing all of the right things and to have an upright heart and still have an attack by the enemy come at you. Still have the enemy attack you with sickness. Still have the enemy attack you with disease. Still have him attack you in calamity. If you're fearful about something that's going to happen to somebody else in your life, you can open the door just like Job did. Fear always opens the door to Satan. See, there are many, many devoted Christians who've been plagued by terrible diseases, tragedies. Some of them have died. You see, this is not God's plan. It's not God's way of testing you. It is not for you to experience like Job did, tragedies and calamities and sicknesses. That is not how God teaches us. That is not how God builds faith in us. You see, Job's hedge of protection, which was a hedge of faith, came down through his ignorance and fear. You know, when you read in those first 2 chapters, you see that Job was afraid of things that his children were not doing that would make them right. And that fear opened the door for that judgment, or for the attacks to come against his children. But not only that, that fear of what his children were doing opened the door for the enemy to attack him personally. So instead of being in fear, we need to always be in faith. Instead of speaking and blaming God, we need to always be speaking his word and agreeing with his word. See, instead of having great faith in this passage, when you read Job, he began to have fear. He was not trusting in God. He was afraid of the circumstances and the situations. And the result was the devil took the inch. He took the thought. He took the fear. And he took Job captive. You can never give the devil an inch. The devil took Job captive for a season. He was destroying his family, and he was afflicting his body, with boils. And the devil just looked for that little glimpse, for that little opening of fear to come. And then he brought destruction. We're going to look at Job 1, verse 1 in the New Living Translation. And it says, "There was once a man named Job who lived in the land of Uz, and he was blameless, a man of complete integrity. He feared God, and he stayed away from evil." That terminology means he shunned evil. He shunned it because it was wrong. He said no. Job 1:3 says he owned 7,000 sheep. That was a lot of sheep. And 3,000 camels. That's a lot of camels. 500 teams of oxen and 500 female donkeys. He also had many servants, and he was in fact the richest person in the entire area. Isn't that cool that God recorded that about him, right? That he was a blameless man, and that he was a man of integrity, and he shunned evil because it was wrong. He wouldn't do anything if it was wrong. Verse 8 on Job 1 verse 8 says, "Then the Lord asked Satan, 'Have you noticed my servant Job?'" Listen to how God describes Job. So cool. "He is the finest man in all the earth. He's blameless, a man of complete integrity. He fears God, and he stays away from evil." You know, that's like God, boom. Yeah, this man loves me. So Job is described in these scriptures as somebody who is blameless. That means his heart was upright before God. He was God-fearing. He wanted to please God. He was one who rejected evil and stayed out of the kingdom of darkness. We can read all of that in chapter 1. And so right now, what we need to remember is faith, not fear. Faith will always keep you free. Fear will always put you in captivity. So in our next lesson in the Back to Basics series of health and healing, we're going to continue to look at the life of Job. And this concludes this lesson on how Job was taken into captivity. Thank you. I'm Pastor Sandy Hertzfeld. Thank you for watching.